I was thinking back to last May when the New York Times ran this very long and carefully sourced article about Kill Tuesdays, in which they described at some length how the President of the United States on Tuesday afternoon sits with his top people and they go over, which person maybe should be assassinated and review that, and then they decide, and then the person is assassinated. And it was kind of an astonishing thing to see on the front page of the New York Times. And then there was like a totally absurd follow-on to that, which is that the Republicans got very upset because they thought that the Obama people had deliberately leaked it to make him look good. And so, what country are we living in? And they wanted an investigation of who leaked the news that the president assassinates people. Somehow, fortunately, that went away. But I think it's very interesting that something like that would appear, in the front page of the New York Times, and really just like a tree falling in the forest. It came out and then it seemed to just go away. But I think one thing that is really changing now is that the silence around these assassinations and around drones has begun to finally lift. And we'll hear a little bit more about this in terms of the confirmation hearing. So this whole question of drones, which maybe a year ago seemed like a marginal issue that would be number 20 on your list of things to worry about, has moved up a lot on people's list. The only good thing I can think about the war on terror that we've been in since 9/11, the one redeeming thing you can say about it is that you get to meet nice people who oppose it. So I'm very, very happy tonight to have an old friend and a new friend here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce them sequentially. So I'm going to start with Ann Wright and introduce her a little bit and have her give a talk which is going to more focus on the international dimensions of the whole drone phenomenon that we're faced with. And then we'll introduce Nick Mochern. I'm doing it that way so you'll remember who he is right before he talks.
Will I? That's the question.
I don't know. So that'll be kind of the structure. So we'll hear from each of them, and then really open the floor for questions and discussion by everybody, because I think there's a lot to really talk through. I was trying to think about how to introduce Anne briefly. So I'm working on that, but I don't know how many of you have had the honor of being in a meeting with her or hearing her speak. Just a remarkable person who was a career military person and rose to the level of colonel in the U.S. Armed Forces. Then went to the State Department, where she was awarded for bravery because she had helped to register people. There we go. This when you're a professor, everything is a registration. Helped to rescue people out from Sierra Leone, thousands of people that were helped to escape there. And then in 2001, when the State Department, I guess, decided they didn't want to force people to go to Kabul, but they asked for volunteers of who would go in and open up the embassy. Anne was one of the group of about 5 people that actually undertook that and did open the embassy. And was there in Afghanistan for some extended amount of time. But as many of you know, on the eve of the Iraq War, she resigned from the State Department in an act, I think, of great principle and of great courage. And she has really been a voice of dissent ever since, and I think somebody who has just brought a tremendous amount to the anti-war movement, and has been. I was asking her to count how many times she got arrested, and I think she actually didn't quite get to the full total yet. But she has been everywhere and really bringing a very intelligent voice to these events, and has also played a very important role in terms of the situation in Gaza, and went there with the flotilla to bring aid to Gaza, and has been back to Gaza about 7 or 8 times, so that's another very important part of what she's done. And I think just in the last month, her contribution was that at those hearings of the confirmation hearing of Brennan, I think yours was the first voice that we heard disrupting and speaking out, like, why is this going on? And I'm really happy to welcome you to Brooklyn.
It is a great pleasure to be here in Brooklyn right now. I just flew in last night from Ireland, and I was there with the Peace and Neutrality Alliance for Ireland and the Irish Anti-War Group. And I'll just quickly mention this because the U.S. military hands are everywhere, and Shannon Airport in Ireland has been used over the last 10 years as a transit point for U.S. military going from the United States into Afghanistan and Iraq. And over 2 million U.S. servicemen and women have transited at that airport. Many people in Ireland feel their government has sold out this whole issue of neutrality, which is in their constitution, neutrality by allowing the United States to go through there. They feel so strongly about it that they have actually gone out onto the runway and the taxiways and beaten up some of our airplanes. Yeah, they have. And
but non-violently.
Non-violent hammers they use to whack those things. And of course the U.S. military says it causes millions of dollars of damage, but when they were taken to court, 2 different sets of people, the Irish people in the jury said, you have every right and responsibility. This is a neutral country and those planes should not be there, even though our government's letting them, so go ahead and beat them up. And they didn't serve 1 day in jail, not 1 day in jail, yeah. So I think we need some Irish juries over here, because we seem to be having people sitting in jail. In fact, we've got one person right now who is in jail for 6 months for putting one toe over one line at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. And another fellow who actually did the same thing was in jail for 4 months. So these, the system is telling us, the people, don't dare protest these things. We're going to throw you in jail and make a real example out of you. Now the hearing for those 8 of us that got arrested a week and a half ago at the Brennan hearing for standing up, and since John Brennan is a part of extraordinary rendition or kidnapping people all over the world, torture, enhanced interrogation techniques, and now as one of the chief architects of the United States assassin drone program. He is as a special advisor on counterterrorism to the president. And one of the ones, as Rusty mentioned, is a part of one of the most horrific things that I think they have gotten themselves into on war criminal actions, where the President of the United States in his kill list is now the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, and the executioner of people in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Yemen, and in Somalia, and to include American citizens. 3 American citizens have been murdered, executed in the country of Yemen. I'm going to do a quick little run through. I know you all have had many programs here on drones before. In fact, Nick was here last year with Medea Benjamin, and then Medea was also here a couple of weeks ago at the Culture Project. So I suspect most of you all know the story of the drones themselves, but what I want to focus on is some of the issues, or some of the things are just now arising for us because there's been so much outcry, and there has been a lot of citizen activism in our country. Newspapers are starting to take notice of it. We're getting more publicity on television, and even the United Nations has now appointed a special rapporteur on civilian casualties of drones. And in fact, when I was in London on another trip, which was a month and a half ago, I went to the press conference that Ben Emerson, who is the UN Special Rapporteur, had, where he said that in the next 4 months he'll be investigating civilian casualties caused by drones, there are 3 countries mainly that are causing civilian deaths by drones, and also militant deaths too, but how our government classifies who's a militant and who's a civilian is one of the great questions for us all. The 3 countries that are killing people with drones are the United States, the UK, and Israel. Those are the big 3. There have been drone attacks in other countries that are that don't seem to be recognized. The United States actually did a drone attack in the Philippines that killed 8 people. 3 years ago. Abu Sayyaf, you know, the Muslim militant group in the island of Mindanao. How many knew that? How many know that we have a new drone base that's being built in Australia? Yeah, and now just this week, a new drone base going to be built in the country of Niger. U.S. drones that have been used in Libya, Tunisia, Mali. What's happening in North Africa, we should be prepared to raise your voices. U.S. drones are going to be used all over the place. The French Minister of Defense just this week said, I can't believe we the French don't have any drones. We're having to rely on American drones. We should have our own drones because we're going to be a part of what the British are now calling a generational war. Generational wars in Africa. In the places, though, that the United States is directly involved in right now, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia, just this week again, we're getting more information from our own country, from our own legislators. Just today, here is a little article. Senator Lindsey Graham, South Carolina. 2 days ago, he was speaking to some Rotary Club or some civic group down in some little town in South Carolina, and all of a sudden he started talking about drones, and he said, and the United States has killed 4,700 people with our drones. Well, this is the first time any government official has ever said anything about the numbers of casualties, militant or civilians. It's the first number. Well, it appears that his office is not taking any phone calls from hundreds of people, probably starting with Barack Obama saying, Lindsey, what are you doing telling our secrets? Maybe we'll have to treat you like we're treating other whistleblowers. Bradley Manning. Maybe old Lindsey Graham, if he's telling these secrets. You know, this is really interesting. 4,700 people, 4,700 people that Lindsey Graham says that the United States has killed by drones. We have statistics, and I'll hand out a little thing that comes from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. I don't know if I've got enough for everyone. I've got 40 copies of it, so if maybe you all could share and look at them. These statistics come from the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which is in London. But they have probably the most accurate figures on the number of drone attacks. In Pakistan, I was in Pakistan with the Code Pink delegation in September of last year, late September and early October. We had 32 people that went to Pakistan to challenge our government's policies, the assassinations of Pakistanis. Anywhere from 2,400 to 3,200 Pakistanis have been killed in the last 8 years. We, the United States, have targeted assassinations. That's the kill list that the President does every Tuesday, where the 16 intelligence agencies that we have give him a list of names and the criteria or the information they have, the evidence that shows that he should pick them to die that week. And then the President makes some sort of calculation, and we still don't know this because the executive part of our government is not letting the legislative or the judicial branches of our government know much about these drone programs. And in fact, as a part of the confirmation hearing for John Brennan, one of our senators, Wyden from Oregon, wrote quite a letter to John Brennan saying, we've been asking the CIA for answers on all these questions of drone strikes in Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia, and you haven't given us any information. And the President hasn't been giving us any information about the criteria that you all have set up for him to use. And let me just read just a couple of things. Specific questions regarding the President's authority to use lethal force against Americans, just even Americans. You know, the 3 Americans that have been killed in Yemen. How much evidence does the President need to determine that a particular American can be lawfully killed? Does the President have to provide individual Americans with the opportunity to surrender before killing them? What standard is used to determine whether it's feasible to capture an American? What is the legal basis of the intelligence community's lethal counterterrorism operations, and how does it work into this authorization for the use of force, which is the overarching thing that says that America can be at war forever? The authorization to use military force against anybody designated as terrorists. I'll pass out these questions too, because these are things that we should be watching for as further confirmation hearings on Brennan happen. I mentioned the United Nations. The UN just this week, has put out a report on civilian casualties in Afghanistan and categorizing them by the method by which people were killed. And for the first time, they have now put the category of drones in there. Drones. They say that 4,700 Afghans were killed last year. Most of them, they say 81% of them were killed by the Taliban, 21% by international forces. Of the ones that were killed by international forces, drones killed 16, they say, 16 civilians. This is in 506 drone strikes. In Afghanistan, the United States last year, 2002, had 506 drone strikes. We don't know how many militants were killed, but the UN figures say 16 civilians were killed and 3 were injured. I think this is a super low number, because do you know how many drone strikes we had last year the United States did in Pakistan? I mean, that's where the big uproar is, isn't it? We never hear about drone strikes in Afghanistan. Last year there were 48 drone strikes. Only 48. And yet there were 10 times, 12 times more drone strikes in Afghanistan. So on this page that I handed out, I actually had created that page of numbers about a month ago when we had no information at all on drone strikes in Afghanistan. So we now know that the UN is at least calculating 16 people killed in 2012. In 2011, they say there was one civilian killed by drone strikes. I think their figures are totally off. So what we have to do is to continue to put pressure on organizations to try to come up with figures, but it does show, we do know from our own Lindsey Graham that somebody told him that there are 4,700 people that have been killed. So one of the things we'll be doing now is going to his office probably on a daily basis to say, give us the figures, Where did you get those figures? Because he got them from somewhere, and I can guarantee you, if we have the surveillance ability with these Predator drones to be watching what we are doing as the United States targets and kills people, they loiter above those hits, and they start counting out bodies being brought out. And they also sometimes kill the rescuers. You've heard about that, where we are on a second strike, we are targeting the rescuers, and then if they finally get to go to bury the people that have been killed in these, we the United States have attacked the funeral parties. I mean, it is a sordid thing. So America firing drones in Afghanistan, Pakistan. Afghanistan done by the U.S. military, Pakistan by the CIA, Yemen and Somalia, combinations of the two. Let me mention the other country that, Great Britain last year had, Great Britain has fired 374 drone strikes in the time it's been in Afghanistan. There are no figures at all on how many people have been killed with those. Israel, in the last 8-day attack on Gaza, which was in November of last year, November 2012, by using the data that 2 human rights groups in Gaza, both the Palestinian Center for Human Rights and Al Mazen Center for Human Rights, they both had a day-by-day, almost hour-by-hour listing of military attacks in Gaza by all sorts of military armaments, whether it was F-16s, drones, whether it was helicopter gunships, whether it was naval bombardment or whatever. So I took all those lists and went through them, and it turns out that there were 91 drone strikes, 91 drone strikes in that 8-day period. There were 36 people that were killed by drones. 12 of those people were what the two organizations, one of the two organizations has said was a member of an armed group or a militant. I just used their terms, and it wasn't necessarily both of the organizations saying that that person was a militant, but even if one of them said it, I counted them in. So that means that 24 people were civilians. 2/3 of the people that the Israeli drones killed were civilians. So this whole idea of civilian casualties is very important, and I'm glad the UN is starting to work on that, because as we see with drone technology and the proliferation of drones, that there are all sorts of countries that are starting to get drones. And what's good for one's good for the other one. You know, that's the way they feel about it. The Iranian military was able to bring down one of our most secret drones somehow. Hacking, that's right, hacking. Hacking into, yeah, what is it? Charades here. They were able to bring down one of our most secret drones, and one can be assured that they're reverse engineering that thing. The Chinese have 25 different drones. The Israelis are the second most prolific drone manufacturers in the world, the United States being the first. Israel has about 15 different kinds of drones. The United States is still the highest seller of drones, as well as all other military armaments. The United States sold $1 billion worth of drones to NATO countries last year. Israel has sold $100 million worth of drones to Russia alone. So these drones are going everywhere, and we have sold them to Mexico. Mexico has some of ours. I mean, they're all over the place. And as far as our national security and these things go, I think that's one of the points that the people that our friends that are going out to all of our military bases and putting up signs saying, you know, these things are dangerous for us too. That it's so easy to use these things that our own military bases should be thinking, you know, what if somebody tries to attack us with one of these little things? Because it doesn't take much, and the smaller drones are available commercially. It is having a little impact, these protests are, because up in Syracuse, New York, the commander of the drone outfit up there has now gotten an injunction against us.
An order of protection.
An order of protection against us. None of us have ever even met him. We don't know what he looks like. But somehow this idea that these protesters are telling him he's a danger to the community. He is causing danger to the community. And now he's got a protective order against us. Well, there's a lot to the drone program, a lot going on here. And if we keep track of it on a day-to-day basis, I mean, it's surprising how much stuff is coming out in the newspapers. But it's really up to us if we want our nation to stop using these things, stop assassinating people around the world. Our voices need to be heard, and this next week or so down in Washington is going to be a critical time on the confirmation of John Brennan. So whatever you have, time you have to be calling up the members of the Senate's Committee on Intelligence, calling up the people that are sitting on the drone caucus. You know, we've got something like 58 members of the House of Representatives that are on a drone caucus. They've been getting money, one would think, from the drone manufacturers. Get in touch with all of them. This is a critical time for us right now. If we want to stall this drone program that now trains more Air Force pilots or operators, more drone operators are being trained in the U.S. Air Force than we have fixed-wing planes, pilots for fixed-wing planes. So it's the weapon of choice now for the U.S. military and for the CIA. the CIA, a non-military intelligence agency that is now one of the biggest drone operators in the world. So with that, why don't I stop with that and then turn the floor over to Nick, and then we have plenty of time for questions.